Hi everybody, my name is Ajeet Singh Rena. Today I am here to present on a topic titled Making AI/ML Deployment Easier Using the New GenAI Stack. So let us get started. A little about myself. I am currently working as a DevRel engineer at Docker. I am author at collabnix.com, my personal blogging site with over 500 plus blogs which I have authored on Docker, Kubernetes, and IoT. I was also a part of Docker Captains program for almost 5 years. In the past, I have worked at the company like Dell EMC for almost 8 years, VMware for 2 years, CGI for 2.5 years, and Redis. Now let's begin our conversation with a trending term called as LLM, large language model. So when you talk about large language model, it is a type of an AI that mimics your human intelligence. They use some kind of a statistical models to analyze the vast amount of data. They learn the patterns and connections between the words and phrases. Now let me take you to one of the report from Valuate. Now they run a kind of a survey and the result was the LLM market will be valued and it was valued at around 10.5 billion USD in 22 and is anticipated to reach around 40.8 billion USD by 2029. Now what's driving this significant growth? The key driver of this growth is the need of NLP, which is a natural language processing technology. And these technologies has been used across number of applications, including the chatbots, virtual assistants, the content production, the translation services, and much more. Now, one of the most popular example of LLM is ChatGPT. Compared to the Facebook and Twitter, which almost took around 2 weeks time to acquire or to reach 1 million users, the ChatGPT acquired the same in just 5 days. Today, ChatGPT has almost 180 million plus users. And this number is growing rapidly since the chatbot was just launched in November 2022. Now, why LLM is so popular? What is the reason behind the popularity of LLM? Now, when you say large language model, it is a type of an artificial intelligence that uses a deep learning model and that operates massively on the large data set to understand, summarize, generate, and predict the new content. Now, LLMs are trained on massive amount of data, and that such as books, articles, codes, the internet, and they learn to identify the patterns and the relationship in the data. Now, there are certain reasons why LLMs are so popular. The first one is the automate data retrieval task. So LLMs can be used to automate tasks like finding and summarizing such kind of an information from a large data set. And this saves the business time and money, and it also frees up employees to focus on more strategic tasks. One of the best example is which you can see here is an OpenAI GPT-3. Now GPT-3 is a large scale LLM known for its ability to generate the human quality text. It can also be used for information retrieval task, leveraging its knowledge base to extract those relevant information from a large dataset. The other example is the improving customer services experience. So LLM can be also used to create those chatbots which can answer customer questions. And you have seen that the ChatGPT has been used in a multiple format. One of the example is think of it as like a Rasa. Now Rasa is an open source toolkit for building the chatbots and conversational AI application. I worked in one of the blog posts with one of the Docker captains where we showed how to use Rasa. So if you go to docker.com/blogs, you and search for AI/ML based blogging content, you will see about the Rasa. So Rasa offers a very modular architecture and a variety of components which allows developers to summarize the chatbots to meet specific needs. And there are other examples like Dialogflow, Microsoft Bot Framework, Amazon Lex. The third reason is expedite research. So LLM can be used to expedite research by helping our researchers to find and analyze the information more quickly and easily. One of the example is very popular Hugging Face summarization pipeline. We have a Google Clouds natural language API and Amazon Web Service Comprehend API. The fourth reason is creating a new products and services. So LLM can be used to create those new products and services which were not possible before. For example, LLM can be used to generate very creative content such as poems, code, scripts. It can also use to develop a new translation, machine translation systems and other AI application. One of the best example I would say is the GitHub Copilot, which is like very popular. It is an LLM powered code completion process, code completion tool that suggests the code snippets and completes your code based on the context. And it can be used with various programming languages like Python, JavaScript, Java. Now let's discuss about how generative AI or say LLM is different from the traditional machine learning, because we already had a machine learning for a long time. So now if you look at traditional machine learning and AI approach, it involved training a model for a specific task. This means that a separate model needs to be trained for each new task that you want to solve. And this approach has a number of drawbacks. The first drawback is these models were trained for a very specific task that have a poor transferability, which means that they cannot be easily adapted to a new task, right? It can be difficult to get enough training data for each of these new tasks, and this is especially true for the complex task, right? Scaling this task, scaling this approach can be a challenge in this because you need to train and maintain a separate model for each of these tasks. And lastly, but not the least, this approach requires a specialized expertise. You might have seen the data scientists which are required because you need to have an expertise to train and deploy these ML models. At the other end, when we talk about the foundation model AI, these addresses the drawbacks which we have in a traditional AI model. And what they do, they basically these paradigm, which what it does, it addresses these drawbacks by training the large foundation model. And this model is trained on a large, massive data sets of text and code. Now, foundation model has a number of advantages. The first advantage is it is more generic in nature. It can be trained on very less data, which because they have already learned a lot of information from a massive data set. Foundation models are also easier to scale because you only need to train and maintain a single foundation model. And lastly, but not the least, it also requires very less specialized expertise, which means that you don't really have to be a data scientist to implement a foundation model. Now, when you talk about the foundation model, I think we are talking about more like a Gen AI, even though there is it looks very similar, but there are differences in between the foundation model and generative AI, right? So, but rather than going in depth into it, let's talk about what are the challenges with these kind of foundation model. Now, when you talk about the foundation model, it is very generic in nature. And there are other piece of models like a Gen AI models, and these Gen AI models are more like it is designed for a specific task, such as generating the images, translating the languages, and these models are not as versatile as a foundation AI model, but they may be more accurate for this specific task. Now let's jump into the challenges which these Gen AI model faces today. The first one, uh, trained to generate a human-like language, not to make an accurate inferences. So Gen AI models are uh, are typically trained on massive data set of text and code, and the training allows them to learn a statistical relationship between the words and concepts. So, however, this training doesn't really necessarily teach Gen AI model how to make an accurate inferences with languages. For example, Gen AI model might be able to generate a text that is grammatically correct and fluent, but the text might be factually incorrect and misleading. The second challenge is training data comes from various public available corpuses, which can hold a false, biased, and contradicting information. The third option is the knowledge cutoff, as you are already aware of, like the Chat GPT, the GPT 3.5 has a knowledge cutoff. These training Gen AI models is very resource intensive. This is because GenAI model needs to be trained on massive endpoint data, and they are often trained on a specific data which are for several years, right? They have been trained for several years. And ChatGPT, one of the example is, since this data is coming from the public domain or publicly available content, blogs, and all things, there are chances that there is a knowledge cutoff. And the fourth one is the lack of enterprise domain knowledge. So GenAI models are typically trained on general purpose datasets. This means that they might not have knowledge of specific enterprise domains. For example, they might not be able to generate a text which is more relevant to the financial service industry or a healthcare industry. And lastly, but not the least, the inability to verify or attribute sources. So GenAI models are not able to verify the attribute sources. That means that you can tell that they can't tell you where the information that they are generating from, right? This can make it very difficult, because now it is very difficult to go ahead and validate the information. Now, this brings a very interesting topic of LLM hallucination. Okay, so sometimes what happened that user might unknowingly rely on these AI generated answers, leading to the adverse outcomes, especially in the fact driven fields such as law or healthcare or finance, right? So this in this section we will talk about what are basically the causes of this LLM hallucination. So now when you talk about these LLMs, right, as in the example, sometimes what happened that you might have seen that when you go to the chat GPT and ask about any of the questions, like one example is, okay, who won the World Cup? And later point of time when you try to educate it, saying like, no, it is Argentina who won the World Cup, not the France. And then the chat GPT blindly goes ahead and trust on your information and it apologize it. You might have seen multiple times. So what causes this LLM to hallucinate? Uh, while efforts are ongoing to explain this phenomenon, machine learning engineers have focused on these factors. The first one is the large training data. So large language model, it underwent an extensive unsupervised training fed with a very diverse training data, and this data was derived from multiple sources, and verifying that it's fair, factually correct is very extremely difficult, right? Now the second point is the prompt engineering. To use LLMs, user input text are prompts. Okay, prompt serves as the means to instruct the GPT-3 to perform the specific task, and therefore you need to be very clear about your objective. When your prompts are incomplete, which means that you can expect that LLMs like ChatGPT might throw an incorrect information, which is very difficult even to go ahead and validate it. And there are further LLM limitations like knowledge cutoff, and I think most of the things that we have already discussed. Now, how to help LLM to do better? So the first thing is fine tuning. So fine tuning is a technique which involves providing a large language model with additional training that is very specific to their particular use case. So this can help to improve LLM performance on that use case by allowing it to learn the nuisance of the language as well as the domain. So there are a number of benefits. The first one is it will generate more accurate and relevant text. It also helps to generate text which is more creative and original, and also generate text which is more tailored to the specific needs of the user. So the second option is a new few shots learning. Now in few shots learning is a ML technique which provides a large language model with a very small number of examples of the desired output. Now the LLM then learns to generate the new examples of the desired output by analyzing the patterns in the examples that it was given. Now there are a number of benefits to few shot learning. The first one is it learns the new task very correctly and quickly. It learns the new task which is not well represented in the training data, and also it generates more creative and original text. And the third one is a grounding, and that is what we are targeting to use the tools which can help you in the grounding. In grounding is a process where you connect a LLM to a real world data, just like how you do the grounding in terms of the lightning where the electricity, the lightning which is generated, from the sky or a cloud that gets grounded to your the earth, right? So in the same way, what we do basically, we connect a large language model to a real world data, and this can be done by providing LLM with access to large amount of data that is relevant to the task at hand. For example, if you are training an LLM to generate a text that is relevant to a specific topic, then you would provide LLM with a large amount of text on that topic. We talked about the limitation of the LLMs and why LLMs are so popular, what are the challenges which we face. Now let's talk about how Docker, along with the other industry leaders, is trying to solve this problem. And that's what brings us to GenAI Stack. Now GenAI Stack was announced for the first time during the DockerCon, and it came through the collaboration between Docker, Neo4j, LangChain, and Llama. Now let's deep dive into the goal of this complete collaboration and try to see what kind of a problem Docker is trying to solve along with these industry leaders. Now, when you say GenAI Stack is a one-stop shop for getting started with GenAI app, it is basically a set of Docker containers that are orchestrated by the Docker Compose tool. It provides you with all the tools and resources which helps you to build and run LLM locally on your computer without even have to worry about how to set it up and how to configure everything yourself. Now with the tools like ChatGPT, which is basically hosted by the OpenAI, right? In the same way, and they are hosting in their own infrastructure. It has access to the public data. Now with the GenAI Stack, what you have a control over your data. You can deploy it locally on your machine, and that makes it very easy to build and run a AI app that can generate text, code, and other creative content. Now it includes generally the four tools. The first one is the Llama, which is a management tool for your local LLMs. Llama has already been downloaded more than 100,000 times from Docker Hub. At the same time, we have a Neo4j, which is a database we will be using it for the grounding, and it is a quite popular graph database. And then we have a GenAI apps, which is based on LangChain. Now LangChain is nothing but a framework that provides developers with a high level of an API to interact with LLMs. And then we have a pre-configured LLMs models such as Llama 2, GPT 3.5, where we can use it to jumpstart our AI projects. Now you might ask why Docker choose Llama, Neo4j, LangChain when there are other generative AI tools available in the market. Now, as I said, right, Docker has already always collaborated with the industry leaders. Now, LangChain and Ollama, they are already expert in LLMs. So we want to just go ahead and pick it up. As I said, Llama has already downloaded 100,000 times from Docker Hub, and that is the reason why it is so popularly used. And even today, it is being downloaded in a massive way for different generative AI applications. Neo4j, expert in graph database, knowledge graph, and LangChain, expert in LLM. And then we have a Docker desktop, which provides you with the completely development environment where you can go ahead and build, share, and run your containerized application. Now, let's deep dive into the benefits of GenAI Stack. Now, GenAI Stack is basically an open source stack which is hosted on GitHub. So which means that you have access to the complete code, right? Just by going to the GitHub and try to clone it and run Docker Compose up. Which brings us to the other topic is how easy it is to set up an LLM locally on your machine. Just one Docker Compose file. This is an easiest way to set up the complete stack by using and running one single Docker command. Now, GenAI also allows developers to do an enhanced query using a Neo4j graph and the result enrichment for application to summarize data and showcase the knowledge retrieval process, which we have already talked in the past slides. Also, it allows developers to generate a diverse response across various formats. So one example is you can talk to the PDF and retrieve the data and validate it then and there. So in our demo, we are going to see that how the generative AI can help you to talk to the PDF and collect or retrieve the information which you can validate yourself rather than some kind of an LLM hallucinations. Okay, so next we are going to see the use cases where generative AI stack can be used. Primarily, there is a GitHub page for GenAI Stack which shows a few of the examples and demos. We are going to look at two of them. One is building the chatbots, and the other one is a chat to your PDF. Now, to implement this, there are few of the services which we are going to use in our Docker Compose file. The first one is Llama, LangChain, as a second one, and the third one is a Neo4j. So with this, let us jump directly into the GitHub repo and see how to go ahead and implement it. Okay, so when you look at GenAI Stack GitHub repo, you can see that the whole source code is open. So this helps you to start building your own LLM model on your local machine. You can see there are a couple of environmental variable which have been set up based on Neo4j, Llama, and the LangChain. And since we have support for all the different platforms like Mac OS, Linux, and Windows, so you see the specification for running a Docker Compose file for each of them. So let me go ahead and try to bring up a Docker Compose file which gives you all the information. So if you look at each of these services, we have already studied about it. So what I'm going to do right now is say Docker Compose up-d. Now once I do this, then most probably what happened that if there is a GenAI Stack which is already running, it will just go ahead and bring up all the services which has been stored. Since I am already running those services, then most probably what you are going to do right now, you can just look at containers under the Docker desktop, and you can see all these services which has already been running, right? Now there are few of the services which is like few of the applications which are listed here. Now if you look at this application, there is a support bot, there is a Stack Overflow loader, PDF reader, we have a standalone bot API and bot UI. So I am interested more on the PDF reader which runs on port 8503, so I can quickly get into this particular application. So once you click on it, it will ask you about uploading your PDF file. So what I'm going to do, I am just going to go ahead and upload my resume. Now in Dell EMC, I have worked for almost 8 years. So I am just going to go ahead and run a query saying like, how long did Ajeet work in Dell EMC in total? Okay, now once I do this, then it will try to go ahead, try to match all those contents and everything. And you can see here it is, the application is running in the backend, and it will try to fetch an information about a particular candidate. So now the data set has been provided. It is not it is not fetching from the publicly, but it is just provided in the resume. Now if you see here, as I said, right, I almost worked for 8 years, so it gave me the information saying like, okay, Ajeet worked for Dell EMC for 7 years and 9 months. And how beautifully it has also break down the tenure in terms of senior system engineer and senior system development engineer, right, in Dell. So this is one of the example. Now there are other examples which I can show you here. It's basically the support agent bot. You can see here, if I click on 7474 browser, okay, not this one, this is a new 4J one, but let me go ahead and click on support agent bot, right? Now if you look at this particular example, you will realize that there is a support bot which is there. And let us look into what it means. The first thing is this support bot answers the support questions based on the recent entries. It also provides you with a summarized answer with sources. It uses two things which is called as a RAG, right, which is based on a pure LLM resource. And then we have RAG disabled and enabled. In enabled, we have a vector plus knowledge graph context. So we have both the vector database as well as a knowledge graph database, right? To quickly show an example, so what I'm going to do, I'm just going to go to the Stack Overflow and pick up this particular query where I am asking, okay, how to access this index while the iteration over the sequencer for loop. And I'm just going to go ahead and provide to the bot and say enter. Now let us see how it try to resolve this problem. So I just if you look at this particular Stack Overflow, it says like, okay, you can use a built-in function like enumerate, and the same way now you can see here the system is, as I said, right, we are giving the access of LLM, access to LLM to the outside world. So that is where it is trying to go ahead and try to fetch this information, where it says like, clearly says like, okay, you can use a built-in enumerate function, which means that this chatbot could be one of the forum bot, or it can answer all your queries which you have internally, rather than even going to the Stack Overflow. You can take an help of this particular local chat GPT kind of interface to get your queries answered. Now there are a couple of other examples which are like a Stack Overflow loader, standalone bot UI, which you can use in your day-to-day work which you do. Now with this, we came to the last, the section which are full of the references. So there has been a couple of blog which we have been writing, especially on AI ML accelerated with Docker, GenAI Stack source code, and Neo4j has few of these blogs which they have written. So with this, I end up my presentation. If there are any queries, feel free to ask. I would be happy to answer on that.